if you are within 5 years of retirement, we do offer 2 pre-retirement seminars each year that go more focused towards what you need to know and questions you need to ask before you go into retirement. One of those constant sessions that we always have is with John Powell from Social Security. Maisha said, there's some missing money from FERS. Well, John's going to show you where that missing money is. We're so fortunate now. We're so fortunate to have the support of Social Security in this, and the ability to now draw from Social Security in this time of retirement. So John Powell is the Senior Public Affairs Specialist for Region 7. He goes around all over the 4-state region and does presentations like this. So please welcome John Powell.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And first, I'd like to start off by asking, is there anybody who cannot hear me very well? Feel free to raise your hand. All right. And I've learned over time that the answer to that question either means everybody can hear me or nobody can hear me. So I need to figure out a new question, I think. But thank you, Larry, and to the FEB for inviting Social Security out. I know you guys have already absorbed a wealth of information today. And over the next roughly maybe 40 minutes or so, I'm going to provide a good, solid overview of Social Security retirement benefits and how they relate to federal employees. And at the end of that, we'll have some time maybe for a few Q&As. And as things wrap up, Larry will have some closing remarks. But as people are kind of making their way home, I'll kind of hide out in the back of the room. So if you have kind of a one-on-one question you'd like to ask, please feel free to come by and catch me. Now, Social Security was never intended to be a worker's sole source of retirement, but instead a foundation on which to build a well-rounded retirement. And as federal employees, we're very fortunate because we have a pension, we have TSP or 401k, and other people may have other sources of income, maybe money they saved in the bank, an IRA, they may work part-time, but all those things together kind of round out your retirement. Now, for the average U.S. worker, Social Security replaces approximately 40% of their pre-retirement earnings, making it a significant portion of their retirement income. One question we're asked very often at Social Security is, at what age should I file for benefits? And at our agency, it's not our job to be a financial advisor and tell people when they should file, but it is our job to give people the information they need in order to make an informed decision. So there's lots of factors to consider when you're deciding when to retire, but ultimately it is a personal choice and a personal decision. One of the many factors you should consider is, how long am I going to have to fund my retirement? Or in other words, how long am I going to live, or life expectancy? And right here on the screen, we have the average life expectancies in the U.S. today for people who are 65 years right now. The average man lives to about 84. The average woman lives to about 86 years old. But you also want to think about your own situation. How old are your parents, or how long did they live? Did they make it into their 80s, 90s, or beyond? How well health are your siblings in? How is your health? These are things to consider because, as we'll learn in a moment, the age you take Social Security will affect how much you draw. And even though Social Security is paid for life, pensions are paid for life, you may have other sources of income like a TSP or an IRA that you might be drawing on throughout retirement that, if you don't plan carefully, could potentially deplete. And so that's where life expectancy and trying to plan and make an informed decision comes into play. Currently, there are about 173 million workers in the United States right now who are paying into the Social Security program. And about 94% of all workers are covered or eligible to receive Social Security benefits, retirement benefits down the road. And so in other words, not everybody pays into Social Security. And whenever I get to speak to an audience of federal workers like this is always the best example, because in this room, by a show of hands, is there anybody here from day one with federal employment, they've always been covered under the CSRS retirement system? So just a few in this room, and there may be some online. And then you also probably work with people who, or maybe you've recently retired who worked under the CSRS system. People who work under CSRS actually do not pay Social Security taxes, so they're part of the 6%. That's not covered under the taxation of that. However, I would imagine, by a show of hands, how many people are under FERS and have been under FERS from day one? And that's myself included. We're part of the 94% who've always been paying under the Social Security program. Now, a worker contributes to the program through taxes. So every pay period, about 7.65% of your paycheck comes out and goes towards FICA tax. FICA is for Federal Income Contributions Act. And that 7.65% goes towards helping to contribute to the Social Security Retirement Disability Trust Fund, as well as the Medicare program, so that down the road, when you've reached the right age, you'll qualify and be eligible for those programs. Now, a lot of people don't realize that in addition to what you pay into FICA taxes, all employers match that same amount. So an employer will also pay another 7.65. So for each worker of the 173 million workers paying into the system, 15.3% of their salary or wages are going in to fund the Social Security and Medicare programs. Specifically, a worker becomes eligible for Social Security benefits by paying those FICA taxes and earning what we call credits. Years ago, we used to call them quarters, and you'll see why in a moment, but for a worker needs to earn a total of 40 credits with Social Security in order to be eligible or vested in the program. Now, if someone is just getting out of high school or college and getting their very first job, if they earn just $1,300 in wages in the year 2017, that's enough to earn 1 credit. A worker can earn up to 4 in 1 year. That's where it made more sense, I think, when we called it quarters, because you can earn 4 in 1 year. You can earn up to 4 in 1 year. So if a worker just earned $5,200 in wages, they would earn their 4 credits for that year. So with this concept, over a 10-year period of time, most workers earn all 40 credits that they need to be eligible to draw Social Security retirement down the road and to be eligible for premium-free Medicare Part A. Now, some individuals can actually start working, say at age 20, work all the way to age 30, they get their 40 credits in and never work again a day in their life, and they too would draw Social Security someday. However, the check that they would draw would reflect that they only worked 10 years in their lifetime, so it's going to impact how much they draw, but it only requires about 10 years of work in order to be eligible. So by the looks of you, even though there's no one here a day over 35 years old, I can tell, most of you, I'm sure, have probably earned all 40 credits and maybe a few years ago. Now, once someone reaches and they've retired, now the earliest age someone can retire with Social Security is 62 or older. Now, when someone retires from their job and they contact Social Security and they're 62 or they're 63 and they sit down and they say, I want to start receiving my retirement benefits in a month or two, how much am I going to get? Well, when we assist that person and we take a look at their situation, there are two main components that we look at in order to determine how much we will pay that person in Social Security retirement benefits. The first component is we look at their earnings record over their lifetime. So we look from the very first job they ever had when they delivered papers when they were 14 years old and they made a whopping $68 on their earnings statement, all the way up through the most current tax year. We look at all those years of earnings and take that into consideration. Then we apply a little math and we bring all of those earnings up to modern day dollar amounts, or in other words, we call this indexing. So for example, if someone made $8,000 in the year 1975, we would run a little formula and say, well, if someone made $8,000 in 1975, that's roughly equivalent to $25,000 in the year 2017 when you take into consideration the change in the value of a dollar. So that brings all the earnings up kind of an even playing field, and we look at all those earnings. We then go to step 2, and we pull out the highest 35 years of earnings that worker had. So if that worker had 40 years of earnings, we're going to toss out the lowest 5 and keep the high 35. A lot of pension plans in the government and private sector will look at the high 3 years, the high 5 years. Social Security is very different. We look at the high 35 years. Then we apply a little more math. We add all those years of earnings up together and we come up with a really big dollar figure for that worker. We then divide by how many months are in 35 years, and that produces a number that's unique to that person. And that number we call the average index monthly earnings, or in other words, that is what that worker made on average every month throughout their working lifetime. And in this room, there are people who are the same grade and step level making dollar for dollar the same amount of money. But if you look over the past 20, 25 years, it's unlikely you made the exact same amount of money as that person all of those years. So this average monthly earnings amount is going to be a little bit different for each worker because we base it on a 35-year period of work. And so a person's work history plays a significant portion in how we calculate their benefit. We use this number in formulas we have to help finalize their benefit computation. The second component that makes a significant impact on what we determine will pay someone in their monthly benefits is the age the person is when they elect benefits. Now up here on the chart, if you take a look at the left column and find your year of birth, and look over to the right, this is called your full retirement age, the Social Security full retirement age. Now earlier I mentioned that a person can draw benefits as early as age 62. However, what this age means, this is the age a worker would have to wait until to file for Social Security retirement if they wanted to receive a full, unreduced benefit amount. So as you can see, it's changed over the years depending on the year of birth a person is. For today's talk, we'll use age 66 as the full retirement age just to keep it simple. But it's good to commit that age to memory, to remember your Social Security full retirement age. Now this slide puts it in perspective just a little bit more. If you take a look at the very center of this chart, you'll see age 66 for this worker. And in this example, at age 66, this worker, if they waited to file till 66, they would draw $1,000 a month in Social Security benefits. Now at this point, I like to make a little note in that in this chart, we used $1,000 because it's a nice even number to illustrate a point. $1,000 is actually quite a bit below the average Social Security benefit at full retirement age. So this is just for illustration purposes primarily. But if this worker decided to take benefits at the earliest possible time at age 62, their benefit would be reduced about 25% or they would receive about $750. Now, at the same time, they would also receive 48 more payments between age 62 and 66. Now, if instead the worker decided to delay, and you can actually delay beyond your full retirement age, all the way up until age 70, and those benefits will continue to increase in value until you file and start collecting them. At age 70 is when Social Security retirement benefits reach their maximum value. So there's no reason to wait beyond age 70. Now, between age 66 and 67, for each year a person delays past their full retirement age, their benefits increase about 8%. So if this worker waited all the way till 70, that's 4 more years, 4 years at 8%, their benefit would be 32% higher at age 70, or $1,320. Now, it's important to note that any person can actually file for benefits any month between age 62 and age 70. And the benefit is just a little bit more each month you delay. So these are just kind of landmarks to kind of give you the idea. If someone decided to take benefits right at 62 years old in 6 months, their benefit would be in between $750 and $780, for example. If they waited until 62 in 1 month, their benefit might be like $757 a month, for example. So it goes up incrementally. Now, whatever you decide and choose sets the tone and the basis of what you will receive throughout retirement from Social Security. So once you elect that benefit amount, other than maybe cost of living adjustments and possibly other smaller adjustments that could potentially occur, this really sets the tone for what you'll receive throughout life. Now, up to this point, we've talked mostly about the worker and how their benefits are computed. We take into consideration the earnings that they've had over their lifetime, the age they elect benefits, impacts, how much they draw. Now, for the next few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about other family members of the worker, of the retiree, that may be eligible for benefits off that worker's record. Spousal benefits are generally paid in one of two situations. If you have a married couple, Bob and Jane, and Bob worked over the years and brought home a paycheck, but Jane, her job was to stay home, raise the kids, keep the house going, a difficult job, but not one that pays very well. And maybe she never had any earnings on her work record at all, so she never earned those 40 credits and wouldn't be eligible for Social Security retirement off her own work record. So if someone didn't have any earnings at all, then, but they were married, they could apply for a spouse's benefit off their spouse's record. If they filed for benefits when they were at their full retirement age of 66, they can draw up to 50% of what their husband or wife was drawing from Social Security. So if Bob was drawing $1,600 a month in Social Security, Jane never worked and filed for benefits when she reached her full retirement age, she would draw $800 a month, simply because she is the spouse of someone who worked and paid into Social Security, and she had no earnings. That's one scenario. Now, if a spouse drew benefits early, like at 62, they are also reduced for early withdrawal, just like retirement. And yes, sir, you had a question?
The spouse's percentage is, say, the husband's FRA. So the spouse's percentage is a percentage of, say, we're talking this account, the husband's full retirement payment. Is it 50% if he delays, picks up the delayed benefit? Or if he takes it early, it's a reduced because of his.
Right, so the question is, how is the spouse's benefit impacted by when the husband draws their benefit? So the 50% is based off the husband's, in this example, the husband's full retirement age benefit. So for example, if that husband waited all the way until age 70 and got that extra 8%, we don't take 50% off of the age 70 amount. We take 50% off their full retirement age amount to compute that. But very good question.
Same thing if you took it to 62, you still get it from the 60.
Now, if in this example, if the spouse or if Bob retired at age 64 for a reduced benefit, but if Jane waited all the way until her full retirement age, she would still get 50% of the full benefit amount. So, and I'll talk in a little bit how to find estimates and calculations on these types of examples. And I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
That's 50% of her own retirement.
In this example, Jane didn't work at all, so she's not eligible for any Social Security off her record. And so this would be if she waited until 66 and filed off of Bob's record, she would be able to draw 50% of his record. So that's one scenario where a spouse didn't work. The other scenario when a spouse can potentially draw a benefit is if the spouse had low earnings over their lifetime. Maybe they worked part-time off and on, and they're eligible for retirement benefits, but maybe not as much as their spouse. So let's say Jane works part-time over the years, and she's eligible for $400 a month in Social Security off of her retirement. Well, when she files for benefits at full retirement age, her spouse, Bob, is drawing $1,800 or $1,600, I apologize, that was the example I was using. If we take half of that amount, half of $1,600 is $800. In that situation, we would actually take 2 applications for Jane. She would draw the $400 she's eligible for on her own record, and then we would pay her an additional $400 a month as a spouse off Bob's record, which would bring her up to $800, which is 50% of her spouse's unreduced benefit. So we don't pay both benefits in full. What we do is we base the benefit off whichever one pays higher. Now, it's more common in this day and age that both spouses work and have a full career and this sort of thing. And when that occurs, when both couples file, sometimes the benefit they can draw off their own record is more money than what they could potentially collect off their spouse. And in those situations, they would simply draw their own record. For example, if Jane was eligible for $1,200 on her own work record and we looked over and she's potentially eligible for $800 on Bob's, we wouldn't switch her to the lower $800. We just pay her the higher $1,200 and she wouldn't draw anything as a spouse. So spousal benefits are primarily for individuals who had no work or low earnings, and then they can potentially draw additional benefits off that record. Now, in addition to spousal benefits, there's the potential for benefits for a divorced spouse. And they work in a very similar way in that these are typically paid when, let's say that the divorced spouse has had no work or very low work compared to the other spouse. And just like in the examples I gave you, then there's potential opportunity for benefits for that individual. One of the requirements is that the marriage had to have lasted at least 10 years, and the person filing for the ex-spouse benefits must be unmarried. So it can kind of vary on a case-by-case basis, but it's important to remember that whether someone is drawing a spouse's benefit or an ex-spouse's benefit off of the worker's record, any additional benefits paid on that worker's record, they do not reduce how much the retiree themselves receives in Social Security. These are just additional benefits that are payable to those spouses. Yes.
Like my wife, she retired civil service, and she has no benefits for Social Security. So will she be able to draw Social Security off my first when I'm gone?
That's an excellent question, and one that I'll address in a few slides. that comes into place, something that may impact her goal called government pension offset. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So thank you, good question. Now, I want to
One more question.
Oh,
Read
yes.
the next slide. Just hypothetically, I'm kind of curious, are you limited to one spouse? So say you were married to two different people for 10 years and you didn't work at all. Could you draw Social Security benefits from both of those people?
No, we look to see which spouse of the two would pay the higher benefit and entitle that person on the one that would pay more money. But I like your thinking. All right, well, I wanted to send, oh, yes.
Hi, I just wondered whether the scenario of the spouse being able to, one spouse being able to get half of the other's amount, in the both of the full retirement age, in the case that, like, say, a husband at full retirement age goes ahead and gets his social security, but then, like, say, a few years later, his wife then reaches full retirement age, but she's getting quite a bit more. Can he switch to, at that point, getting half of hers if it's greater?
He can't switch directly, but something similar could happen. So in that scenario, what would happen is a few years later when his wife, the higher wage earner, retires. Now keep in mind, we're comparing 100% of his benefit next to 50% of theirs. So usually the earnings would have to be pretty extreme for that to be possible, but it can happen. And in that example, if the benefit he was receiving turns out to be less than 50% of what she just started to receive, then we would take an application at that time for a spousal benefit for him. He would keep getting his benefits, let's say $600 a month, and then we would take a spousal benefit so he could draw maybe an extra $250 a month off of his wife's record. So his benefit would be bumped up to, in that example, to match the 50% mark, but we actually still continue to pay him his own benefit, but we might pay the difference between the two. And he would actually draw benefits off both records to kind of bring him up. So once she files, that might add some additional benefits to his record if the math worked out right.
Right, okay, so then in that case, we would come in and just file a spousal benefit application.
That's right. And Social Security, our representatives are trained and we're very good at finding those scenarios. So in that example, when the wife files, we would identify that, oh, it looks like her husband can draw a little bit more money. We need to contact him and take an application. That's something we do on our own. It doesn't hurt to say, oh, I think my husband can draw more money. That's fine. But that's something we would absolutely catch.
Well, if you file online, though, then you're not really
we would still catch it if you filed online. Because every application filed online is reviewed by a knowledgeable claims representative, and they go through all the information. And one of the things they're always looking at are, was this person married, any prior marriages, and so on, to see if there's additional money anywhere that either the person filing can draw, or do they have a spouse or maybe a child that we'll talk about in a moment could potentially draw. So whether you file online or in person, it would be identified.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I wanted to share, actually I had a move on, but maybe at the end we'll have time for a few more questions. But I wanted to share some information on deemed filing. This is a change in the law that occurred about a year ago, and it impacts some people when it comes to filing for benefits that they're eligible for retirement benefits off their own record and possibly a spousal benefit off of their husband or wife's record. And this was a change in the law that a lot of newspapers and investment news editors would write about in USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine. So this, you may have heard of this in different terminology, but it's something I wanted to make you aware of. there was a change in the law, and there's actually two sets of rules. So when the lawmakers made this adjustment to the Social Security program, instead of just saying this is in effect for everybody, which would have made things a little more simple, what they did is they said, okay, this is in effect for people who are this age and older, but not for this age and younger. So we have two sets of rules. So I'm going to explain the two sets of rules. So it's called deemed filing, and I'm going to give you examples to illustrate these points because it's a little bit of a tricky rule. If we take, for example, someone, and this date here on the screen is very important, January 1, 2016. If someone files for Social Security benefits and they reach age 62 by this date or after, so right now they'd be about 63 years old, right? If they were age 62 on January 1 or later, then they're under the old set of rules for what we call deemed filing. They're grandfathered in, and what that means is, I'm going to give you an example to illustrate this. If a person worked under their own record and they're married, and they wait all the way until their full retirement age of, say, 66, under the old rules, that person would have the option to file for their own Social Security benefit off their own record. And I'll give you another example. We use Bob and Jane again. So let's say Bob's retired, Jane's just now retiring, and at 66 years old, Jane is under the old set of rules, and she contacts Social Security to file for benefits, and she finds out she can file for $1,000, receive $1,000 a month off of her own Social Security record when she reaches 66 for full retirement age. We look over at Bob's record and find out that she could potentially get $900 a month off of his record. Now remember, generally we pay the higher of the two. However, under the old set of rules, for people who were age 62 after January 1, she would have the option to restrict her application and say, I don't want to file for my own retirement of $1,000. I don't want to touch my own record. I only want to file for spousal benefits and get the $900 a month. She could restrict that application. Now you might say, well, why on earth would someone take $900 when they could take $1,000? And it goes back to something I told you about earlier. If you don't touch your own retirement benefit at full retirement age, what happens? It keeps growing at 8% a year. So in that example, Jane could start drawing $900 a month and start collecting that every single month. And during that time, her own benefit is growing at 8% a year. And when she reaches age 70, she could give us a call and say, hey, I've been drawing $900 a month for the last 4 years. I want to switch over to my own benefit now, which is now grown by 32%, and it's at $1,320. That is the old set of rules, and that is a potential option for people who turned age 62 after January 1. The new set of rules that applies to me, and probably most of you, are for people who were not age 62 by that date. And the new rules state that no matter what age you are, doesn't matter what age you are, you must file for your own Social Security benefits first. So in other words, at full retirement age, that person no longer has the option to say, I don't want my own retirement, I just want to take the spousal. Now the new deemed rule says you have to file for your own $1,000 a month. And because you're drawing $1,000 a month, that's greater than $900, so you won't draw any benefits off of your spouse. And so that filing strategy is no longer a possibility for those individuals. So when people contact us and say, hey, can I do this filing strategy, that filing strategy, our first response is, well, it depends. How old are you? Because our answer is different depending on if you were 62 on or after this date or not. So There's additional information I brought with me at the back table that you're welcome to grab. It's a one-page frequently asked questions that talks about this if you want a little bit more information. But it's something I wanted to make you aware of because it's been in the USA Today and Forbes and all the big financial sections in the past year. Yes. Yeah.
Should it say 62nd birthday is before January 1st, 2016?
Because a lot of us here, our 62nd birthday is going to be after the January. I would think you mean that should be before January 1st, 2016 to apply for that rule. Because a whole bunch of us, our 62nd birthday is going to be after that date. Do you see what I mean?
Well, no, I understand, and this is accurate. So it's another way of reading this is you could say if your 62nd birthday is on or after January 2nd. This is to be taken literally. So if your 62nd birthday is after January 1st, and so you mentioned a lot of us won't meet that cutoff, you're right. Probably almost everybody in this room is under the new rules that the lawmakers implemented that says you can no longer pursue that filing strategy. The lawmakers did that in theory so that people who are very close to retirement who are planning on doing this strategy within a year or two didn't get that opportunity taken away. But they set this time limit so people who were maybe a little bit further out from retirement, it switched it for them. But this is to be taken literally after January 1. Yeah, then you're under the new set of rules. Yeah, if you turn 62 after that date, you're under the new set of rules. That's correct. But thank you. It is a tricky rule. It really is. And that's why I try to explaining the laws, and I just try to use scenarios because I think it's easier to digest for myself and I think a lot of folks. But be sure to pick up one of those handouts. They're actually very good as well.
So that applies to the new rule, not the old rule. You have to be 62 after 16 to use the old rule.
Right, so the question was, does this apply to the new rule or the old rule? So in order for the old rule where you could pursue that filing strategy to apply, you would have had to have turned 62 years old by that date, by January 1. But if you didn't turn 62 until after that date, then you're under the new set of rules and you would not have that filing option. Okay. Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and continue on, and there'll be some time at the very end here for a few additional questions. Now, we've talked about spousal benefits. Sometimes the retiree, if they have dependent children, can also, their dependent children may qualify for benefits off the retiree's record as well. So in order for that to occur, the mother or father has to file for Social Security. And if they have a child that's under age 18 or between age 18 and 19 and still in high school, or older than 18, and it can be any age beyond age 18, they can be 25, 30 years old, but if the medical evidence showed that that child was disabled prior to age 22, then those dependent children would be eligible for a monthly Social Security check off of their parents' record. So for example, if someone retired at 63 years old, they stopped working, but they had a 17-year-old in the house still, their 17-year-old would qualify for a monthly Social Security benefit. Now, we don't pay that check to a 17-year-old for obvious reasons. In most cases, we pay that to the parent in most cases, and that money is to be used to help provide clothing and shelter and food for that child. Once that child reached age 18, those benefits would stop. Unless they're still in high school, the benefits would continue until they either graduate from high school or they reach age 19, whichever comes first. And then, of course, an adult disabled child can potentially draw benefits and those benefits would be paid off their mother or father's benefit for life. And when their parent passed, that adult disabled child would continue to draw what we call a survivor's benefit off of their deceased parent's record as well. Now, all of these rules about spouses, ex-spouses, children, it's a lot to take in, but it's something to be generally aware of. As I was mentioning earlier, Social Security does a very good job of screening to see if you or someone in your family may be eligible for additional benefits. And we do that in a very simple way. On every single application, we ask the following questions. Are you married? Do you have any prior marriages? Do you have any children under age 18? Do you have any adult disabled children? We ask all these questions not because we're nosy. We're asking them because we're looking to see, do you have a 17-year-old at home that we need to take an application for? Do you have a spouse that might be able to draw benefits? We're looking for potential benefits that might be able to be paid to maybe you or a member of your family. Now, here in the next few minutes, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. There was only a few number of people in this room, and I'm not sure about those listening in online, who are covered under the CSRS program, but the bulk of the people here are covered under FERS. But these next couple of slides pertain to people who have worked under the CSRS program. So if you've got a slide in your FERS retiree, you could actually just put a big X through this page. This would not apply to you if you're a FERS person. If someone had worked under CSRS their whole career, that they had not paid into Social Security. However, if that person maybe worked part-time at another job or had a previous career where they did pay those taxes and earn those 40 credits in order to receive a monthly Social Security check, when it comes time for them to retire, because they're going to be receiving a pension based on work in which they did not pay Social Security taxes, which is what a CSRS pension is, not a FERS, we use a special formula to compute their benefit amount. That formula generally results in a lesser benefit that's payable, and it can vary on a case-by-case basis depending on the specifics of the person's situation. But if you or you know someone who has been a career-long CSRS person, a great way to find out a benefit estimate for them is to visit our website at socialsecurity.gov. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a blue icon. And if you click on the calculators button, we have about 6 or 8 calculators in there, one of which says a web calculator. And you'll be able to plug in some basic information and get an estimate if you're a CSRS person. But once again, this does not apply to FERS workers. And additionally, and this goes to the question I had over here just a little bit earlier regarding spousal benefits. So let's say we have someone who worked under CSRS their entire career, right out of high school, right out of college. They never paid into Social Security, so they have 0 out of 40 credits, right? But they've been working under CSRS. So they are not eligible for Social Security on their own record, but they're married, and their spouse should pay into Social Security, so there's the possibility of spousal benefits, right? Now, if a retiree is collecting a non-covered pension, such as a CSRS pension, and they apply for a spousal benefit from Social Security, similar to the WEP provision, there's another provision the lawmakers enacted over 3 decades ago called the government pension offset that we must take into account. And what that says is if a spouse or a widow applies for a spousal or widow benefit, we have to run their benefits through a formula in which we take 2/3 of their non-covered pension, such as CSRS, and in this example, If we have a $1,200 non-covered pension, 2/3 of that is $800. If that individual applied for and was about to receive potentially $750 a month as a spouse off their husband or wife's record, then we have to offset that amount by 2/3 of their pension. So if we take $800 and subtract it from $750, that would leave nothing left to be paid. It would essentially wipe out anything that could be payable to that individual because they're receiving that non-covered pension. So in most cases, if someone's getting like a CSRS pension and they apply for a spouse or widow's benefit, their pension is going to either greatly reduce or possibly eliminate any potential benefits that they can draw off their spouse's record. Now, one thing I brought with me is some information, and once again, this does not apply to FERS retirees. It would only apply potentially to people who are under CSRS throughout their career. I did bring some one-page handouts that explain in detail the web provision and the government pension offset in a little bit more detail, and explains a little bit of the rationale that the lawmakers had when they implemented these provisions several decades ago for additional information. Now back to all retirees. Remember that full retirement age we talked about. It's 66 for some people, 66 and a half for others, 67 and so on. Let's say someone retires, they completely stop working at 62, and they start collecting their pension, and they start collecting Social Security benefits. And they realize a couple of months later that they miss work so bad that they have to go back to work. And if they decide to go back to work, they're allowed to go back and earn a certain amount of money, but if they earn over a certain threshold, some of their Social Security benefits are going to be withheld. Now, this only applies to retirees who are younger than their full retirement age, so younger than 66 or 67, whatever your full retirement age is. So if someone retired at 62 and then a month later they decide to go work part-time at Home Depot or something, they could earn up to $16,920 a year at that job and still collect a Social Security check all 12 months of the year. But if they earn over that limit, some of their benefits will be withheld. We withhold $1 for every $2 someone makes over that limit. So for example, if someone contacted us in January and said, hey, I decided to go back to work, and we said, about how much do you think you'll earn this year? And they said, well, I'm going to make $20,000, $20,920. So they're going to be $4,000 over the allowable limit. Because they're $4,000 over, we apply the $1 for every two, we would have to withhold $2,000 of their Social Security benefits for that year. And the way that translates is typically we might withhold their January and February Social Security benefits, their checks, and then they would get paid from March all the way through December, and they could still make their $20,920. So if you're under that limit, we won't withhold anything. If you're a little over it, we're going to withhold some. If you're a lot over it, we're going to withhold even more. Sometimes a lot of people call us at age 62, and they say, I want to start collecting Social Security, I want to file an application. First question we ask them is, well, are you still working? They say yes. And we say, well, are you going to retire soon? And they say no. And we say, well, how much money do you think you'll earn this year? And they say, I'm going to make $150,000. And we say, well, based on this formula, you would not receive a single check this year. So you would need to contact us back when you either reduce your work, or retire, or when you reach your full retirement age, that earnings limit disappears forever and you can make as much money as you want to. So this only applies if you're under that full retirement age. So something to be aware of. And yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that how much money would they earn not paid. They're not money.
That's right, and to kind of repeat your question for the group, so that's right, if someone reaches 66, if that's their full retirement age, whatever their full retirement age is, then you can make $1 million a day if you want to, and we don't care, and you'll still collect the Social Security check all 12 months of the year. That earnings limit disappears when you reach your full retirement age. It only applies when you're under your full retirement age, that's correct. So for those people who are in good health and they're working, they plan to work, a few months or a year or two past their full retirement age, it's an option to file for benefits and collect while they're working. Or you could decide to delay further until you need those benefits, but it's an option. Now, taxes on Social Security, federal taxes, in many instances, Social Security benefits are subject to federal taxes, and it follows these guidelines that the IRS provides to us. If someone files as an individual on their taxes, and their income as defined by the IRS, their income as defined by the IRS, is $25,000 or more, then they will pay taxes on a portion of their Social Security income. For a married couple filing jointly, if their combined income is $32,000 or more, then they would pay federal income tax on a portion of their Social Security income. So it can kind of vary depending on a case-by-case situation, but these are the basic thresholds here on when Social Security benefits are subject to federal tax. Every year we mail out a 1099 statement so you can do your taxes. And here in a little while I'll let you know how you can get your 1099 statement online in case you've misplaced it and it's ready to go. You're ready to go to the tax person. I wanted to share with you in our last few minutes some online resources that I encourage you to check out in the next couple of days. One, of course, is just socialsecurity.gov, our website. There's a wealth of information here that's very easy to navigate, very easy to read, very easy to understand. And we've divided it out into different sections. You can go to the menu at the top and select retirement and read all about retirement benefits, about the information I've shared today, and you can go into more detail if you wish. You can read about, click on spousal benefits. You can read about survivor benefits, disability benefits, and even Medicare. So there's just a wealth of information that's very easy to read. So I encourage you to go to socialsecurity.gov to find out some good information. One helpful tool we have on our website is called the Retirement Estimator. And right on our home page, you'll see an icon that looks something like this. Basically a little calculator, little yellow calculator. And this is a tool that allows you to plug in different what-if scenarios. What if I retire at 62? What if I retire at 64 or 68 or 67? And it'll provide you different benefit estimates. Now, in order for it to provide you accurate benefit estimates, you actually type in some basic information about yourself, your name, your Social Security number, and a few other identifying pieces of information. And with that, I want to share a note. It's very important, and I'm sure most all of you do working for the government, you always want to be very cautious about providing your Social Security number to anywhere to anyone, and about putting it on the internet. But I've got to tell you, out of all the World Wide Web, if there's one website that is safe to provide your Social Security number on, it would be socialsecurity.gov. And the reason why is because, one, we already know your Social Security number, and two, if you remember, we're the ones who gave it to you. So you're not telling us something we don't already know. You're just putting that information to use so you can get an accurate benefit estimate to help you plan and make an informed decision. So I encourage you to check out our retirement estimator. If you have not already, I strongly encourage you to create what we call a My Social Security account. You might remember over the years, years back, we used to mail out an annual paper statement to everybody. Had a green stripe across the top. You'd open it up, see how much money you're getting, and throw it away. And hopefully you'd put it in the shredder. Well, we no longer mail those out for a couple of reasons. One, we figured out it costs a lot of money to buy 200 million stamps. And instead, we ended up putting it online. So when you create a My Social Security account, this is for anybody who's 18 years old or older, can open an account, and you can get estimates at what you'll draw at age 62, your full retirement age, and age 70. It also gives you estimates on what you can draw in disability benefits, or if something were to happen to you and you had a young family, how much could be paid out in survivor benefits. So it's not just retirement planning, but life planning. There's a lot of great features in here. In about 22 states in the US, people can log into their My Social Security account and request a replacement Social Security card be sent to them, even if they're not receiving benefits just yet. Missouri and Kansas aren't on board yet, but we have our fingers crossed that it won't be too much longer before residents of Kansas and Missouri will have that option. And once you have done your plan, you're ready to file, you have 3 options in which to do so. You can file online at socialsecurity.gov. It's very easy. It takes about 15 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, every person who files online, that application is not automated by a computer. Every application is thoroughly reviewed by a knowledgeable claims representative on the other side. And if they see anything that raises a question, they're going to give you a call at the phone number you provided to clarify anything that they may need. And if you get to the end of the application and realize, oh, I've got a question, I wish I was sitting next to someone, you can actually just type out your question in the comments box and say, before you finish my application, I really would like to know the answer to the following. And we will call you. We will play phone tag with you as long as it takes to connect with you and answer all your questions before we finalize that application. So it is a two-way street. You are able to communicate that way. It's very easy. But for people who prefer to have an application on the phone or in office, you can do that. You can schedule a telephone appointment on a certain day at a certain time, or an in-office appointment at a certain day at a certain time, by simply calling our toll-free 800 number there and scheduling that appointment. Our agents on the 800 number can schedule an appointment for any office in the country. And lastly here, once you start collecting your Social Security benefits, you can log into that same My Social Security account, and it works a lot like, well, Employee Express or online banking. But it's really a terrific resource. You can log in and see that your deposits are being made by the U.S. Treasury. If you have Medicare premiums deducted, you can make sure those premiums are being deducted. If you need to change your address, phone number, update your direct deposit, you can do all of that online. If you've lost your Medicare card, you can request a replacement one online. Or that 1099 statement that you may have misplaced and you're about to go to the tax person, you can find it online. And one of the most important features on here is you have the ability to print off what's called a benefit verification letter or a proof of income letter. If any of you have refinanced a home in the last few years, sometimes we'll ask for a letter from Social Security saying how much are you receiving from Social Security, because the lender wants to know, how much they're going to lend you. Or some people who apply for housing assistance, energy assistance, they need these letters from us to prove what their income is. And instead of having to go down to the local office, you can log on and print off that letter and hand it right to the person helping you with your mortgage refinance, or helping that person who's going down to get some assistance with their energy costs. Well, thank you all very much for your time. We're at 4:55, so I'm going to follow
a couple of web questions that we're going to ask because we have people waiting patiently for those.
You bet.
The first one is, my wife has worked in Kansas teaching under Social Security Administration, and I believe this is Kansas Public Employee Retirement System pension for 34 years. If she chooses to go to Missouri, where she is also licensed, but they don't pay Social Security for teachers, is it unwise to work in a non-Social Security environment at 55 and lose Social Security average earnings?
in that situation, there are some, it's not just the federal government, CSRS, that may not contribute to Social Security. Some state entities, there are some teachers in Missouri that do not pay Social Security taxes, but I wouldn't say it's unwise one way or the other, but it is important for them to consider what kind of impact that may have. If that individual had worked quite a few years up to age 55, if a person has at least 30 years of substantial earnings where they did pay into Social Security, they may actually be completely exempt from WEP, meaning it wouldn't affect them at all. So it sounds like this worker may have pretty close to 30 years of earnings already. So WEP may possibly not be a factor, or it may not impact them very much. But that would be a good thing for them to research on our WEP calculator. They could run some different scenarios using our WEP calculator on our website, put in some fictitious information to see how that may or may not impact that person.
Thank you. One more question. If an individual is receiving compensation or disability from the VA, is this deducted from Social Security or retirement?
Retirement benefits are not reduced by any type of a VA benefit, and Social Security disability benefits are not reduced by any type of VA benefit either. If someone's receiving Social Security disability benefits, the only thing that may reduce that is if someone receives a workers' compensation settlement or payment. But generally, if someone's receiving a VA benefit, that would not reduce Social Security disability or retirement. Yes, ma'am. You bet.
You were talking about the old rule.
Yes.
If a person wanted to draw off of the spouse and left there and not touch their Social
Yes.
Security, with the spouse's benefit that you would draw, would it be reduced for? You said a spousal benefit you get half, or
yeah,
how
under the old rules with that scenario, the first opportunity under the old rules for someone to apply for just a spousal benefit and refuse their own, they have to be their full retirement age in order to do that. So they've already reached their maximum spousal benefit possible at age 66, for example. So they would get a straight 50% of their husband or wife's full benefit amount, because if they try to do that at age 62 and they're under the old rules, we'd say you cannot do that unless you're full retirement age.
Okay.
So that option doesn't kick in until they reach that magic age of 66.
Till, let's say I was going to draw my spouse's, then he was full retirement, and I'm full retirement, but I could draw his and let mine set.
Yeah, as long as you were 60. If you're under the old rules, yeah. So if you were 62 after January 1st, 2016, I'm sorry, before January 1st, 2016, then that could be a potential option for you. When you reach your full retirement age, you could find out how much you could draw as off your husband's record and draw that and delay your own and let it continue to grow, right? So exactly. So I would definitely encourage you I have a one-page handout back there that gives a lot of good scenarios.
Oh, okay.
Be sure to grab it on your way out because it'll really help. And then when you contact Social Security, it'll kind of, and whether you file online, and you can do those applications online as well. You can just say, I'm filing for a spousal benefit.
I have my Social Security account already set up. I like that.
Very good. Very good. Yes, ma'am.
Explain the Medicare part. I don't know anything about it besides 65 years old.
You bet. You bet. And actually, let me talk to you just one minute. I'm going to let Larry give a couple of closing remarks real quick, and then I'd be more than happy to hang around and speak with you.
Well, and thank you, John. That's pretty much my closing remarks. And thank you for strong this day to the very end. It's now 5 o'clock.